Hello, and thank you for joining us today at the Bramble Patch. My name is Wendy, and on Technicals today we have Alicia. Thank you once again for all the feedback and comments that we've been receiving. It's really nice to know that you're enjoying the tutorials that we're doing for you. We're still trying to bring you fresh and different things each week, and this week is no exception. I've been playing, basically. I actually was designing a new sampler quilt for the classes at the beginning of last year. But as we know, all the classes stopped. And this actually was a block that I started to design to go within the new sampler quilt I was doing. And I was just doing some sorting out, and this is just like a little sample that I had. And I thought it might be nice to actually just play around with it. This is just a 12.5-inch square. So if you ever want to do anything like this, it's very, very basic. So that one is the center square is 6.5 inches square. The sides here, you cut two of those, 3.5 by 6.5. The long piece along the top and the bottom edge, you cut two of those, measuring 3.5 by 12.5. And then you need 4 squares cut out of the same fabric that you're using on the sides. And those are cut at 3.5 inches square each. So you need 4 of those. The construction is exactly the same as I'm going to show you for the cotton reel. So I'll just set that one aside, but I just thought I'd give you those measurements in case you just want a very, very basic block. Also, with this one, if you do the center square smaller, it's like the bow tie block. Very, very simple, but extremely effective. So that's one block. But I started to think that maybe I could play around with the sizes and make it something different. So if you take a look behind me, you will see that we have what I call our cotton reel wall hanging. This was great fun to do. I did have, I had about 1/2 metre of the background fabric, and I had lots and bits of scraps, so I haven't even used the 1/2 metre. And all of these fabrics here are leftovers from, I made a selection of cushions, and they're all the bits and bobs I have left over. So let's just take a look and see how we actually construct the actual block itself. Now, I've called it a cotton reel because I was gifted recently. Somebody thought they'd got a lot of rubbish they were going to throw out, but they gave it to me because it had got some quite vintage items in it. And some of them were the old-fashioned reels of thread on the wooden spools, which I absolutely adored. So I've actually designed the colouring and the size of these spools against those threads that were given to me. The threads, I would say, are probably about 50 years old, so I won't be using the threads. So first of all, you can use any fabric for this. So this is just one little block I've done in quite a vintage fabric. So it's just one piece of fabric in the centre. If you choose to, and we've said that we're using bits and bobs up, there's no reason why you can't strip piece the centre, because it looks like thread going through it. So that's just a strip one. And you don't have to do these the same width. They can be wider, narrower. They don't even have to be straight. You can actually do them angled if you choose to, and they do look really good. Or you can do something with a stripe fabric, which replicates a variegated thread on a spool. And that one I've done very, very large so that you can see it. If you ever want to do a sign, so if you belong to a quilting group and you're creating a new sign for yourselves, rather than just applique everything, why not piece it? Very, very simple. No special rulers, nothing special that you need. So let's just take a look at the sizes we're going to do. So to do the size that I've used on the wall hanging behind me, what you would need is your feature fabric. So it's the fabric that looks like the cotton on the reel itself. I have cut that 2.5 inches by 3 inches. So that's the center fabric that replicates the thread. The cotton reel top and bottom, so you need 2 pieces of that, and that will be cut at 1.5 inches by 4.5 inches. And I generally use something like a beige or a grey. Doesn't have to be, it can be whatever colour you want to. You might even want to do it on a white spool, because a lot of the modern fabric, threads are actually produced on a white spool. Then what you need is the pieces that go down the side of the actual cotton reel itself. So what I've called that the background fabric. And the background fabric, you need 2 pieces cut at 1.5 by 3.5. Okay, so they will go down the side of the spool. And then finally, you will need 4 squares of fabric cut at 1.5 inches square. Okay, so we'll just set those down there, and I'll try and show you those again just to remind you of the sizes. You can do whatever size you want. These are just the sizes that I made up, because I couldn't do my reels any bigger, because the fabrics that I wanted to use for the thread, that was about the biggest I could get out of my scraps. So that's what I actually chose to do. So what we're going to do to start with is your fabric that you choose to use to replicate the thread on your spool. Lay it right side up, and then your 2 fabrics for your background. So I've chosen white for the background of this one. All I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it right sides together, and I'm going to sew down the long edge. So that will be the side of the spool. So just take that to my sewing machine. And pop that in here. I was really surprised when I started to do this, how many different fabrics work. I mean, as you can see in the sample behind me, I've actually used Liberty fabric, because I did a range of Liberty cushions, and these were the leftover bits from them. But you don't have to stick with a collection, you can use whatever you want to. So I've actually sewn that down one edge. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my second background fabric, and I'm going to place it right sides together, and I'm going to sew it down the opposite long edge. There's actually 3 different ways that I've found to construct this block. And I'm actually showing you the very simplest way. Simplest isn't always best, but actually I really like this way. So that's the way I decided to go with today. I just think it's very effective. Okay. Right, so all I'm going to do, oops, away. I'm just going to give that a press. Now, when I actually do this, normally I press my seams to the dark side. On this one, I'm actually doing it opposite, because I found it actually sat really nicely. Now, as you can see, I'm also using a white background fabric. Now, the background fabric is also white in the wall hanging that I've done. Do remember, if you are using white fabric in the top of your quilt, wall hanging, cushion, whatever, do try and use a white wadding. Because if you're using something like 80-20 or bamboo, and it's cream colour, it will change the colour tone of your fabric and you will see your seams. If you use a white wadding, it will float your seams and it will keep your white fabric pure. I always use white, and you can see from this it is still pure white. It doesn't have that creamy yellowy tinge to it. Right, so now I've sewn this. So I'm just going to set that to one side for a minute, and I'm going to now address doing the top and the bottom edge of the cotton reel. So I've already cut my fabrics. So I have 2 pieces. And then I have my 4 pieces that I've cut for the corners. Now, what we need to do is put the right side down, and I'm going to draw a line diagonally on here. Now, I did bring my fabric pen in, but I'm actually going to do it in pen because I just think you can see it much, much easier. Right, the other thing I wanted to show you, whatever you're using, whether it's a fabric pen or a pencil, whatever you're using, if you've got particularly a smaller square, it doesn't matter, it happens with the larger ones as well. If you start to try and draw your line from the top edge and pull it down, sometimes it can ripple the fabric and scuff it. So it's a good idea to actually bring your pen further down your ruler, just make a mark and then go back. That way you don't kink the edges and make them rough, which then encourages it to fray. So I tend to put my wrong side facing up, my ruler on my fabric. Don't start at the edge. Doesn't matter whether you start in the middle or a little way down. Put a mark in and then go back up, then down. It will eliminate all the fraying on that top corner. And I find this works. I've tried it with lots and lots of different markers, whether it's a fabric marker, pencil, a chalk one, anything. And I actually find it works really, really well doing it like this. So I'm just going to do that. Right, so I've now got all those marked. So what we need to do now is take the fabric that's going to be for the top or the bottom of your cotton reel. Take one of your squares and you're going to lay it so that it sits right at the edge. Now what we want to do is we're going to sew along here. Okay, so I'll sew this one and we'll do this one at the same time, and then I'm just going to show you something else as we go through it. I've actually prepared another little sample for you to see. Because you can't actually see terribly closely what I'm actually doing at the machine, I prepared something else so that hopefully it can highlight what I'm talking about. So I'm now sewing, which you would normally say on the drawn line. It is much better, instead of sewing actually on your draw line, if you actually sew just very, very fractionally to the side of the line, towards the corner that's going to be cut off. Because when that fabric rolls over, you lose a little bit of the depth of the fabric. And sometimes you can find that it actually then won't meet the corner. So here's a little sample that I prepared. So if I hold this here, I have drew a red line with a red pen. And I've sewn it with a purple thread, just very fractionally to the side of it. Now, if I was sewing this, just, you know, I was speed piecing, doing lots and lots of them, it would probably be a very fraction closer to that line. But I've done it like this so you can see that you don't sew on the line. And it was the best way I could actually highlight how better it works for you. Okay, so that's when I say just slight, it's like a hair's breadth away from the side. So now we've got that one sewn on there. All we need to do now is place the other one. So when you place this on, you do need to make sure you've got it in the right orientation. So I've got, hopefully you can see, I've got a line coming in here and a line this way. What we want is a narrow gap on one side and the full width on the opposite side. Do not get this one in the other orientation because it doesn't work, okay? So just for a minute, pop it on there and mentally think short, wide. That way we know we've got everything the right way around. So I'm just going to very, very quickly sew the second square on there. And the last one. Like I said, these go together really, really quickly. And I did notice that I've spoke to quite a lot of people and noticed, you know, things on Facebook. So many people seem to be tidying their sewing areas, workrooms, whatever they've got. And people often say to me, do you ever sew anything for yourself? Well, actually, I'm in the process of getting a new room as well. So I thought this might be quite nice to have something to hang on one of my walls in my sewing room. So that's why I did it and thought it might be nice to share it with you. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut that little triangle off there. So all I'm doing, I'm placing my 1/4 inch mark on my sewn seam and I'm just trimming those little triangles off like so. And I'll do exactly the same to the second one. Like so. Now, because I've pressed the seams to the outside edges on the cotton reel itself, on the thread, I'm actually going to press these little triangles so it goes into the dark cotton reel at the top, because it doesn't look quite as bulky then. I'm going to do exactly the same with the second one. So I'm just going to press that. I'm going to warm as well. And press that one over. Okay. There we go. Now, if you find anything doesn't meet quite right, you can always tidy the block up at the end. So all I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to sew these to here. So if I roll that over, and I actually do pin this, I'll pop a couple of pins in here. So I'll just quickly do that. And then the block is virtually done. I've done a few little blocks to actually show you, because even though I've done them in the layout that you can see behind me, there are lots and lots of different options. The sample that I've done with that little purple one, I will probably actually make it into a cushion. And I've got other ideas of actually what I'm going to put on there. I'm going to put some scissors on there, a needle, and varying bits and bobs, just to make it quite interesting. The other thing that I will say as well, obviously you can quilt it however you want to. You can cross hatch it, you can free machine it, you can echo it, you can do whatever you want to. But do remember when you are quilting, So this is the patchwork part of it, and obviously you need to quilt it. So the quilting, apart from being decorative, is there to hold the sandwich, as we call it, together. So the sandwich being the back in, the middle, and the top. So apart from to hold it all together, it's quite important to remember that the quilting, which is the stitching that's going all through the 3 layers, there shouldn't be spaces larger than 4 to 5 inches. So generally I say, when I'm teaching, make sure that there's no space bigger than fist size. I've got quite small hands, so fist size works, because what happens is if you leave too big an area that isn't quilted, when that item is laundered, then what will happen is the wadding will break down and pull apart. And once that happens, then your quilt won't last as long. And as you put so much time and energy and money into it, what we really need to do is make sure that apart from being functional now, it can become an heirloom as well. So do remember to make sure that you have enough stitching to actually anchor it all together. I'm just going to do this final seam on here. I'm just popping a couple of pins in it. Because I've got a straight seam and a diagonal seam, I do generally put pins in it when I'm in that situation. And I'm just doing this very, very quickly so we can see what's going on. So just give that a bit of a press and then just press that back. Now I've just tried to emphasise that if you do have a bit of a wobble, it doesn't matter. And I've actually achieved what I wanted to do. So here you can see you've got a little tiny piece of fabric sticking out, not the end of the world, you can tidy that up. So there you can see you have your cotton reel block. So you can change the size of them, you can do them wider, fatter, whatever way you want. And hopefully in a few weeks I'm going to be doing another tutorial where I will be using the finished blocks from these to actually show you something else that we can do to edge something with. So once I've got these blocks finished, these will make an appearance in a few weeks hopefully, and I can show you something else that actually works really nicely, that I'm hoping that you can take into some of your quilts, cushions, wall hangings, and learn a new technique that's really not difficult but extremely effective. So there again, once again, there is the wall hanging. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe, take care. See you again very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.